Anyone who's climbed to and beaten A10 knows that not all Ascension modifiers are equally difficult. I would argue some of them make the game easier in ways, while others increase the difficulty significantly. After having about 200 runs of Slay the Spire and beating the hard on A20 with every character in the first game, I feel like I know a thing or two about climbing Ascensions. And so in today's video, I wanted to rank Ascension modifiers in Slay the Spire 2 based on how much harder the game becomes when you have them active, and then give tips on mitigating the effect of those modifiers so you can climb. So starting off with the easiest Ascension, A1 Swarming Elites. Approximately 60% more elites will spawn during a run. And this is one of the only Ascension modifiers that actually feels like a direct buff to your run, simply because elites are very good at helping you scale how powerful your character is during a run. They offer you more relics if you fight them, and additionally they give you better card rewards typically. With them appearing more often, you're going to be able to fight more of them more often, and then scale up your character's power level more quickly, making the game hopefully easier. But if you're really worried about them, there are a few ways to mitigate. Well, actually, the only mitigation techniques that I have for this Ascension is that you should be targeting more elites. Take as many as you can without dying. However, you should also give yourself flexibility and options in your pathing if things aren't going well. While you're building your deck in the early floors, you need to learn what cards you need to take to help you comfortably beat each elite via potions and just the way your deck is built out. You need to be thinking about how the cards you're taking are answering the problems they present. So for example, if you're in the underdogs and you know you're going to be fighting Skulking Colony, or you have a 33% chance of fighting him, taking some good consistent block cards or draw to get back to your good block cards would be a good thing to do. If you're fighting the Phantasmal Gardeners in underdogs, you know you need a lot of AoE or some seriously high burst damage to take one out. That'll make the fight a lot easier, and you'll take a lot less damage if you get that. If you're in the second act and you know you could potentially fight Entomancer, you need to find some strength reduction because that makes it so he doesn't hit you for as much. You could find some non-attack damage like poison or doom, or lots of orbs, or you could try and find a way to get thorns. That does a lot of damage to the Entomancer. So really just thinking ahead and prepping yourself through potions in your deck, what you need to take to make the elites as easy as possible, or get through the elite fights as quickly and easily as possible. From here on out, we're only getting into harder Ascensions. So the next hardest I would say is A5, which is Ascender's Bane. Start each run with an Ascender's Bane, which is essentially an eternal ethereal curse. It's just a curse card that sits in your deck. When you draw it, it's in your hand. At the end of your turn, it exhausts and goes away forever for that fight, but it comes back at the start of every fight. And honestly, this one isn't that bad. It's most annoying in the early game when your deck is small and you don't have ways to take advantage of what the card does. It may occasionally lead to you taking some extra unnecessary damage in hallway fights just because you're not trying to defend when you need it or a strike when you could have killed. But most of the time for me in my runs, it goes pretty unnoticed. There are a couple ways to mitigate this Ascension. The first thing you can do is you can try and find ways to take advantage of the ethereal and exhaust that this card puts in your deck. So cards like Dark Embrace that allow you to draw cards when you exhaust them. Page Storm is a card on the Necrobinder that lets you draw another card when you draw an ethereal card. So it just completely shuts this thing down, completely replaces itself when you have a Page Storm active. A Feel No Pain is another good thing that you can do, or have power that you can get to mitigate the effect of this, so that when it exhausts at the end of your turn, at least it's giving you 3 block or 4 block. Additionally, there are also relics that can benefit from you having this card in your deck, like for example Kieran's Ashes. I think that's how it's pronounced, Kieran's Ashes. It's a rare relic for the Ironclad that when you exhaust, you deal 3 damage to all enemies. Joss Paper is an uncommon relic that every time you exhaust 5 cards, it allows you to draw a card. So it's good fodder for cards like Charge on the Regent and Fiendfire on Ironclad. There's a couple other cards that you can target this one with to kind of make it something useful. Building a larger deck during your runs also helps you see it less often, or adding draw, which you should already probably be doing. Adding draw to your deck can make it so that this is not that bad. You can draw through it and it'll be okay. The next hardest in my opinion is A10, which is the double boss, and you might be thinking like, oh dude, no way. Double bosses is it's like so bad. Double boss on the last act, in what you'd think would be the hardest bosses in the game. But honestly, if you make it this far in your run, you're probably already strong enough to comfortably defeat them. I think most of the time that's true for me. It's probably about 20% of my runs. These 2 fights actually end up being pretty scary. Usually it's just another opportunity for me to parade and show off how amazing my build is and just have fun blowing enemies up. Multiplayer is a totally different story, but with this one, since you're much more likely to face the test subject, who is really, really hard right now in multiplayer. There are a few ways you can try and mitigate this double boss gauntlet at the end of Act 3 for this Ascension. The first thing you can do is you can try to best prepare for whichever 2 bosses you're facing. So for example, if you you know you're going to fight the test subject and you have a crazy poison build on the silent, so you're playing tons of skills, maybe try and find some good attack cards on that floor, like an assassinate or something, or maybe some damage potions to make his first phase less of a problem, because that's going to be when he's most dangerous, honestly. You got to find a way to get through that damage phase, like through an attack pot or maybe a certain power potion, a power card that you choose through a power potion, or a ton of fire pots, or a ton of the rock pots from the little frog guy relic, petrified toad. You got to have a plan. So preparing with potions that perform well in those fights. Honestly, power potions are some of my favorite potions to have in boss fights. I feel like they make a huge difference in how most of my fights go. And another little tip for this Ascension is that the pantograph is extremely valuable. It goes crazy since it gives you 25 health at the start of both of the fights that you have. So it's definitely worth picking up if you see it in a shop, just for that extra 50 HP you get from it in those 2 fights. Okay, the next hardest Ascension. This is the 4th one that we're going over. This is A7 Scarcity. Rare and upgraded cards appear half as often. This includes combat rewards from all enemies as well as the stock of the merchant. So in general, you're going to be seeing less upgrades and less rares, which it's rough. This is kind of the first one where I'm like, ooh, this is tough. And honestly, but this specific one is the one I kind of forget exists during my runs. I do feel the lack of upgraded cards a lot of the time because I feel like I see a lot less, but the rare card drop rate feels very close to the same for me. Maybe that's just, I don't know what that is. That could be some kind of a placebo. I'm just like playing the game and it feels like I'm seeing the same amount. But so there's not much you can do to mitigate this one, since it just changes the way the game operates entirely. But upgrades at campfires become that much more important to get, since you're going to be seeing less upgraded cards in general, or just taking relics that upgrade cards. Prioritizing them more in your path is a good thing, because you want upgrades on some cards during your run. It can change how your deck feels. Another thing is you should probably consider taking rare cards when you see them even more. Even if you feel like they don't 100% work with what you currently have in your deck, they may offer scaling that you could build into the future of your run. When you see upgrades and you see rares, take more time considering them and value those campfires. Okay, the next Ascension is A2 Weary Traveler. This is another one that's actually pretty rough. This is Ascensions only heal 80% of your 8 missing HP. This includes Niao at the start of the game. So this is essentially just directly reducing your HP at the start of every act. And HP is the most valuable resource in this game. It determines if your run ends or not, and it's also the main resource you spend to increase your power. Since you're trading it, you're in effect trading it every time you fight an enemy. You're trading some of your HP for cards and potions or relics if you're fighting elites. And usually what the case is for me is that the worst this Ascension ever is at the beginning of the run. Usually I can build up a strong enough deck to hopefully have this be less and less impactful at the start of each act, since it only targets the missing HP. So if you can finish the act with a lot of HP, you're going to be healing up higher than you normally would, right? So finishing acts with higher HP results in you having more HP at the start of the next act. So hopefully as your deck is getting stronger and stronger, the missing HP that you have will be less and less and not even be that big of a deal. There are a couple of things you can do to make this Ascension less. Number one is get sustain relics. What are sustain relics? Anything that heals you during your run is great, since you will have missing HP that you can gain back. You always have a little bit of a buffer between your max and how much you currently have. I will list off some of those sustain relics a little bit later, but another thing you can do is gaining max HP. Since you're missing HP, gaining max HP, it allows you to heal more at campfires, so it makes campfires even more valuable. The rest option at campfires even more valuable. It also heals you in the moment for however much max HP you gain. You get more HP, and at the beginning of acts you're going to be healing for more, since 80% of your health bar is just increased, or 80% of your missing HP is just increased because you increase your max HP. The next one is A6 Inflation. Card moves at the merchant now start at 100 gold instead of 75 gold. Every subsequent card remove now costs 50 gold more instead of only 25 gold. So this Ascension modifier makes shops a lot worse, kind of in general, since you're more limited in upgrades you can obtain or make to your deck. This just makes removing cards a lot harder in general, taking extra strikes or defends or extra star cards to like the large capsule. And in general, trying to build out smaller decks is a lot harder to do because of this Ascension. So normally in a run you can get 3 removes for 300 gold, but with this active you can only get 2 removes for 250 gold. Pretty much close to the same price, but 1 less remove. What are some things you can do to mitigate this? This essentially encourages you to make larger decks, like I already said, since removes are not very easily found. Starter cards will be present in your deck, but they'll be more drowned out by the other cards in your deck since you have so many. So maybe think about building larger decks once you hit this one. And also, larger decks are kind of nice for the Doormaker fight later on, because he exhausts a lot of your cards, and so having a larger deck definitely helps. Exhaust, Draw, and Transform become strong keywords to have in your deck, since you will likely have a lot more fodder that you can get rid of, like a lot more starter cards in your deck. So think of cards like Be Gone, that's a Regent card that transforms stuff. Second Wind, that burns your skills, so you can get rid of bad defense or something. Fiendfire, you can just burn all your starter cards away and turn them into damage and make your deck smaller. Capture Spirit it's a draw card. It gives you souls in your deck so that you can draw through all the extra stuff that you have and you don't really want to see. Acrobatics is a great draw card. Skim is a great draw card. So stuff like that will all help you get through your deck to the cards that you want to see if you're building out larger decks because you can't remove as much. The next Ascension is A3, Tight Belt. Start each run with one less potion slot. And honestly, this gives you a lot less options and flexibility in which fights you can use your potions. It encourages you to use them now rather than later, since you might not have space for an additional incoming potion. It makes it a lot harder to save potions for certain fights comfortably without skipping other potions you've earned, maybe through combat rewards. And saving potions for certain enemies is really strong in this game, and it makes that strategy much more difficult to employ. Only one potion can be held for later instead of two, while also allowing you a potion rotation spot. This directly nerfs relics like the White Beast statue and the Delicate Frond, which is an ancient reward. They become worse with this Ascension unless you can find a way to increase how many potion slots you have. That said, that is the direct way to mitigate the downside of this Ascension. There are a lot of potion slot relics available in this game. Niao's relic, File Holster just got added. It's one of my favorites, and this completely directly counters what this Ascension modifier does. It gives you back that slot, and it gives you an extra potion, which is really good because you can then take an early elite and start scaling up quickly and start stacking wins. The Alchemical Coffer gives you 4 potion slots. The Potion Belt gives you 2 potion slots. So there's a lot of ways to kind of mitigate this throughout your run if you need to. It's crazy the difference that just one potion slot makes in allowing you the flexibility of saving potions for fights, because you can no longer, I love saving power potions for the boss fight of the act, and I can no longer do that as easily. Or say I find a power potion that I want to save for the boss act, boss fight, and say I have a Thorns potion that I want to save for, I got at midway through Act 1 that I'm going to save for Entomancer. Now I can't take in other potions, so I have to use the Thorns potion in a fight where it might not be as good. It's crazy how much of a difference one less potion slot makes in a run, and I think it's one of amongst the worst ones. But the next Ascension that I think is the hardest, we're entering the top 3 now. This is A3, which is Poverty. Enemies and treasure chests drop 25% less gold. You can curate what you take based on how your deck and relics are performing in fights, so you know kind of what you need, and you can a lot of the times find it at a shop. So less money means less options available to you when you go to these shops, and less opportunity to capitalize on the upgrades that they're offering you, which makes it rough. There's a lot of power that comes from seeing good stuff in a shop, and not being able to acquire all the things you see that you want it can be kind of brutal. So there are a few ways to mitigate this. Obviously, money relics and events are not reduced. Only the money from enemies and treasure chests drop less gold, but money relics and events are not affected. So if you get lucky, consider taking these money options even more at events that you get because they're better. And once you have this Ascension active than they would be normally. Also, be more careful in your pathing. Shops become less valuable with this Ascension, so try going to them when you've accumulated a decent stack of cash already. I usually aim for like 300. I feel like 300 gold is a pretty good number for taking a shop, but just make sure that every shop you visit is kind of worth it and not a wasted floor. Otherwise, it would have probably been better for you to do something else. Something else you can do is take less fights, because the combat rewards, the money you get from them, are not going to be as good. So unless you have a reason to take more fights, like you have a feed or a hunt or the cheese, maybe consider taking more events, because fight rewards are essentially nerfed, but the events are not. The second hardest Ascension, in my opinion, is A8, Tough Enemies. All enemies have more HP. What does this mean? This means that enemies live longer, fights last longer, and so you're just typically going to be taking more damage in fights. It becomes harder to burst down an enemy quickly, which means that you're giving the enemies more time and opportunities to scale up during your fight. And sometimes that extra HP that the enemies have can be the difference between you killing an enemy on a turn or taking a lot of extra damage. In my opinion, the best way to deal with this Ascension is to simply just do more math. Every turn, ask yourself, with the resources you have available, can you win the fight on this turn? If not, then check if you can block well enough just for that turn to survive to the next turn. To make sure you're checking your draw pile to see what you could potentially be getting, to see if you have lethal next turn. So that you just need to be more careful and plan stuff out. Otherwise, you're going to be taking a little bit more extra chip damage every fight. Moving on to the final Ascension, the one that I find the hardest. This is going to be A9 deadly enemies. All enemies deal more damage. Once you hit this Ascension, your starting deck usually is not good enough to sustain the early fights very well. You're just going to be taking more chip damage. I believe like the toad poles, they normally do a 3x3 attack. They're now doing like a 4x3 attack on like the second, third, or fourth floor, which is 12 damage. You can't block that. You're going to be taking 2 to 3 or however much every fight from these guys. You're not going to be able to fully block. You're going to need better block. You're going to need better cards in general as soon as you can possibly get them, to either kill enemies more quickly or block better. And this is especially true in the underdogs currently in the game. Every single fight takes away more of your most valuable resource, which is your HP. And because you're losing more HP for every fight you take, this means you can't scale as easily, right? Because your HP is the main resource you're using to gain power in this game. And if you're losing more of it in normal hallway fights, that means you can't take as many elites as you would normally fight. You can't upgrade as much at campfires because you're having to rest. You can't trade your HP for upgrades at events. So scaling your character just becomes a lot harder once you hit this Ascension because you're losing more of your HP. And scaling your power is definitely the easiest way to win in Slay the Spire, and this Ascension makes that extremely hard. So how do we mitigate this? How do we counter this Ascension? Max HP becomes much more valuable because it not only does it heal you when you gain it, but it heals you more at campfires, which means you're not going to be wasting your campfires are going to become more valuable. So the times you do have to rest or you're forced to rest are going to be better rests, which means you can trade more of that HP that you've gained back throughout your run for upgrades. Sustain relics, they become much more valuable. Blood Vial, the Book of 5 Rings, the Regal Pillow, the Miniature Tent, or my personal favorite, which is the Eternal Feather. They allow you to keep your momentum of trading health for power and upgrades. They keep the uptime high. Throughout your run, you're gaining health back. You're gaining that resource back that you can still continue trading. You don't have to path in a campfire necessarily to rest and continue. You can continue getting benefits every floor instead of sacrificing one to heal potentially. So those are kind of my favorite ways to deal with this Ascension. But those are all my thoughts on the different Ascensions in the game. Let me know if you learned something new, or if some of the techniques I mentioned to mitigate the Ascensions helped you in any way or helped you view the game differently. Me and my brother are starting a shirt business. This is our first design. If you would like to buy a shirt, we're taking pre-orders right now, so feel free to check out this link in my description. If you enjoyed the video or you feel like you learned something new, please feel free to subscribe and stick around. I make a lot of Slay the Spire content just like this. Yeah, at the end of the day, the Ascensions are rough, but there are ways to go around them or make the game not as bad when they're present. Feel free to mention them down below. I'd love to hear them. And I hope to catch you in the next one. See ya. Peace.